Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Judy the YouTube Lawyer, and this is kind of a last minute, just thought I would throw it up live stream so that people can discuss the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd last year in Minneapolis. So it's been a very busy past couple of weeks for me with work. I actually did have my own civil trial earlier this week, so I have not watched every single aspect of the trial. I know there are tons of videos and lots of news coverage every single day of this trial of Derek Chauvin. So, but I will be glad to comment on what I did read and what I did see of the trial through the media. So first of all, I mean, I guess I'll go ahead and say that people can call me biased or whatever, but I think the guy is definitely guilty of second, third degree murder, definitely manslaughter. And it was pretty appalling to me last year when I first heard about the death of George Floyd and what happened. I mean, everybody or practically everyone has seen the video, all the cell phone footage that people took of Officer Chauvin just refusing to budge and just kneeling on this unconscious person's neck for, I believe, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And there were tons of witnesses, tons of bystanders, everybody trying to yell and tell the guy to stop it, to get off the guy. Just basically letting the officer know that, that's enough. There is no need to keep kneeling on somebody's neck when they're already handcuffed and face down and no longer responsive even. So I don't know what was going through Derek Chauvin's head at the time. I guess maybe he felt like he was just going to show everybody, what kind of power he had as a police officer. It's just totally appalling. And I would be extremely shocked if this guy just gets off with nothing, or if there's a hung jury, then he could still be tried again in the future by the prosecutors. But I would be very shocked and surprised. And we all know that, there's likely to be more protests and a lot of collective anger on the part of a lot of people if this former police officer gets away with it. So one thing I do recall noticing early on with the trial, with the jury selection, based on the articles that I read, I was thinking, well, geez, some people that might be good on the jury are just knocking themselves out from jury selection because, I guess each side wants to see if you are biased. But of course, it's natural for any human to be biased, based on what you've seen in the media, based on what you've heard, your own personal experiences and everything. So, word to the wise, if you don't want to be on jury duty, then of course you do want to have very strong feelings and answer in the affirmative if either of the attorneys ask, do you have these strong feelings that would keep you from being able to fully listen to the evidence and assess the evidence objectively? I mean, it's kind of like, well, of course, wouldn't anybody want to say that, yes, I'm going to be objective and fair, and I'm going to listen carefully to the evidence before making up my mind, But if you're so piping upset about something and you go in there and say, no, I was so upset. I think the guy is guilty. He killed George Floyd. Of course they're going to do what they can. The defense will knock you off the jury pool. So, anyway, with that being said, I did follow along more on the prosecution side because that was the week before my trial. So, so from what the witnesses presented, they did present a very compelling case towards conviction. I was especially moved by the testimony of the 19-year-old young man, the teenager who had worked at the convenience store, and he calls himself the domino that caused all the other actions to follow. And, he did seem to be very overwhelmed, and you just feel sorry for the poor kid. So if he's 19 now, then I guess he was 18 at the time. And he was even trying to strike up a conversation with George Floyd when George Floyd first approached the cash register, asking him if he played baseball or played sports or something. And then the employee said that he thought George Floyd was maybe high on something, because George Floyd took a little longer than he expected to respond to his question, just making some casual conversation. And so Christopher did take the $20 bill at first that George Floyd handed to him. And he knew that if it turned out to be a counterfeit bill, then the money would be taken out of his own paycheck. So at first he was willing to just, eat the loss if in fact that bill were counterfeit, because from what I read, he noticed that there was some sort of like blue marking that was on the bill, which made him feel like this must be a counterfeit bill. But then later he did change his mind. He brought it to the attention of his manager. He went out to George Floyd's car, to the vehicle where George Floyd was outside the store, tried to get him to come in. So then things, of course, escalated from there, unfortunately. But, this poor guy, he quit his job immediately after witnessing George Floyd's death. Poor guy, I feel like I hope he's getting counseling or something. It's definitely not his fault. Just so horrible that he happened to be there in that kind of situation where an officer like Derek Chauvin was the one that showed up to the scene. I also thought that having there was a woman who was an EMT worker who also testified on behalf of the prosecution. And she said that she just happened to be there. She was off duty. And when she saw what was going on with George Floyd being, basically suffocated to death, or having the knee in the back of his neck by Officer Chauvin, she did, yell out to the guys and offered to check George Floyd's pulse. And she was told by at least one of the officers to just go away, stop interfering. And she said that she was an EMT worker. She wasn't wearing her uniform at the time, but one of the police officers just basically told her off and said, well, then you should understand, that she shouldn't interfere. So there she was trying to render aid. There are so many multiple people trying to intervene. On the other hand, I think one of the defense strategy was also to try to frame it as, there was like this angry mob of people that were just causing a huge commotion. And then what? So angry crowd of people causing a commotion, therefore made Derek Chauvin freeze up so that he couldn't move his knee. I don't understand that kind of argument, but, clearly the defense has a really tough job. They had to work with what they could, basically blame the victim, make the victim look bad, say that he died of all these other causes because he had hypertension or clogged artery, heart disease, that he was full of drugs. So that's what caused him to die, rather than, having his airway blocked for so long. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there were any other witnesses that I saw on the internet or read about that I think were interesting to remark about. I think George Floyd's girlfriend testifying was also very powerful, because she brought more humanity to him, talking about how she met him several years ago at the Salvation Army, because I guess it was a homeless shelter or something where George Floyd was working security. And she happened to be there visiting her children's father, and was really upset and was crying in the lobby. And that's how she met George Floyd, because he came over to ask her if she was okay and offered to pray with her or something. So, of course, many of us have heard the negative things about George Floyd, about his history of drug use and, holding a gun up to a pregnant woman that he robbed. But I'm pretty sure that was something that was not allowed to be brought forth in front of the jury, because it would be unnecessarily prejudicial. Because bottom line is like, even if he were a criminal or somebody with a criminal record, a drug addict or whatever, that doesn't warrant having your life snuffed out by a police officer who's overzealous and just wants to show off, how much power he has to the point where he kills the person, And let's remember that at the time that this happened, George Floyd was just merely suspected of having passed a counterfeit $20 bill. So, so anyway, I guess people may say that, hey, you're so biased or whatever, but this is my show, so people are free to hold their own live stream shows and give their opinions about the case. So in terms of the expert witnesses for the prosecution did also sound extremely convincing, and having this bevy of other law enforcement officials and the chief of police basically affirming the prosecution's theory that that Chauvin did not follow proper police protocol whatsoever, that he was outside the bounds of using that kind of force on George Floyd. I think that's extremely damning for Chauvin, because most of the time you always hear that the police officers always like to protect their own. They're always going to back each other up, and that's what makes it really hard to have any sort of case against police officers. But yet here, people came out against him, and these were his own colleagues, other police officers, other people trained in proper police training tactics. So that's very convincing. The medical evidence that showed that he did not die because of heart disease or, drugs in his system, but rather he was dead because of the asphyxiation caused by Derek Chauvin. So the defense, like I said, they got to do their job. So what do you expect? They bring out the hired guns, the hired experts. Even though I don't do criminal defense trials, even in a civil context, after a while you start hearing about these like kind of almost, I don't know, a sort of like sleazy types of quote expert witnesses, people who want to make tons of money by offering to serve as experts for litigation purposes. And I've even seen this in the child custody or family law context, where you see the same familiar faces and the same familiar names being floated around as these so-called expert psychologists, people who don't really practice anymore, but they sell themselves to attorneys and law firms, saying that, hey, I can review your case, give me all this money, give me this huge retainer deposit, I'll bill by the hour, I'll come and testify, and sometimes I have felt seeing certain expert witnesses that, okay, this person is just a paid hack. They're happy to say whatever, or whatever they're saying is stuff that's commonly known by everybody anyway. So why is this person charging like $10,000 to come in and talk about this at a child custody trial, for example? So, so I think having that, there was like a medical examiner from Maryland who was one of the last witnesses to testify on behalf of the defense. And it turns out he has been involved in a civil lawsuit filed by the family of an African-American teenager in Maryland, where this doctor, when he was a medical examiner, had similarly concluded that the teenager didn't die because of police misconduct, but because of X, Y, and Z or whatever. So he does have some controversy going around him. So then, of course, we did finally hear Chauvin speak, and nothing really exciting there, just where he reiterated that he understood he did have the right to testify if he wanted to, but he was voluntarily waiving his right under the Fifth Amendment to testify on his own behalf. And of course, the witness, the jury is always told, like even from the start during jury selection, this typically happens where they are told or asked if they can be objective and not hold it against a defendant if he or she refuses or declines to testify. So, a lot of times you would think that, okay, well, if the person were innocent, you would think they want to jump up there and tell their side of the story. But even then, sometimes the attorney for the defense may decide strategically that the person's just going to talk themselves into a corner and make their own case worse or not present well. So ultimately, it is the prosecution's burden to prove all the elements of the charges against the defendant, so the defendant doesn't have to get up there and defend himself. So that's just part of the rights that Americans have under the Constitution. So the jury will start deliberations. Another thing I thought was weird was that the judge didn't even decide to sequester the jury. And you would think they would, because of all the riots and all the uproar since Dante Wright was also recently shot and killed by police in Minneapolis. What are the chances of that? That's just terrible. During this trial regarding the death of George Floyd, then you have another African-American young man being shot and killed by a police officer. It's a totally different situation, but still, I don't know. I mean, if I were to judge, of course I'm not, I would definitely say the jury needs to be sequestered so they don't get wind or know about these riots and what else is going on around Minneapolis, and then perhaps, be swayed or influenced in any way, because you want the jury to remain pristine and not influenced by the media or hearing about things from their own family members. You want to keep the whole system as unbiased as it possibly can. So that was another thing that I thought was a little odd about the case. But I'll definitely be continuing to watch the news and see what happens in this case ultimately. So, well, it's only been about like 16 minutes now, so I think maybe I'll just go ahead and breeze on into a totally different subject while I'm recording anyway. And this has to do with predatory online law schools. And I do want to address this because I have noticed on some of my own YouTube videos that these ads for certain law schools keep showing up. And I'm like, great, like a lot of my videos are kind of skeptical about law schools and whether going to law school is really as great of a idea as many young people think it is. And then lo and behold, I see that ads for Novus Law School, and I think it's called Concord or Concordia. We'll look it up. These law schools are solely online. They're not accredited, and they just basically want to siphon money away from people who otherwise would not qualify to go to like a real law school that's ABA accredited, that will allow you to take the bar exam and actually will lead to a real job potentially. I mean, when you have people graduating from, say, like top 25 law schools that are having hard times finding real legal jobs or jobs that pay more than $50,000 or $60,000 a year, then it's like, why would anyone want to apply to these types of like horrible, god-awful online law schools? So let me bring that up on the screen. Let's look into Novus Law School first, because I've seen their ads multiple times. Oh, look at this. We're online. How may I help you today? Okay, Novus Law School. I had never even heard of this place whatsoever until I started seeing ads on YouTube with my videos. It says, education without borders, online, anyplace, anywhere, anytime. Well, and they'll take anyone. Yeah, really, they're already an authority in online degree programs and classes. As we have for almost 20 years, Novus continues to offer online law degrees through distance education. Novus has an innovative learning environment to meet today's educational standards. JD, Executive Juris Doctor, Bachelor of Science in Law, or the Master of Laws. I mean, those are total jokes. I mean, do not get an Executive Juris Doctor or a Master of Laws. We've covered this in other live streams a little bit, but these are like joke degrees that aren't going to help you get a job and don't even qualify you to sit for the bar exam or become a licensed attorney anyway. So I wonder how much it is. Let's see, tuition and fees. See, they'll probably market themselves as being a lot cheaper than going to a real law school, but there's a reason why real law schools charge a lot more, because you can potentially at least become an attorney from that. Okay, so it says 1 degree term. Law school tuition is based on a single rate for the entire law degree term. This may be different from what you've seen or experienced at other schools. Novus Law School does not utilize a traditional academic calendar. Tuition is not charged on a semester, quarter, or course-by-course basis. It's bundled into one low economical rate that includes individualized curriculum. Okay, so the JD program is 24 months. Wow, I've never even heard of that. See, I mean, this is why people that don't know any better would probably start thinking this seems pretty attractive, because usually JD programs are 3 years full-time, and then if you're a part-time student, it would take 4 years. Although I think there are a couple of law schools like Elon University that now have a JD program that's 2.5 years. So it says the tuition is $11,990. So sure, to people who don't know any better, that does seem like, whoa, such a great deal, because in-state tuition at a school like UNC Chapel Hill School of Law is already probably at least $24,000 just for tuition for 1 year. So you multiply that by 3, so it'll cost you at least $75,000 to get a real 3-year JD degree at a accredited school, in-state tuition at UNC Law School. So this is about $12,000. But who even goes to this school? And do they even have any sort of like admissions criteria? I have no idea, but this just sounds really bogus to me. And I've never heard of anybody who graduated from it who is a licensed practicing attorney. Oh, it says, yes, there are bar admission options for online law school degrees. Each state sets its own requirements for taking the bar exams. While most states require a degree from a brick and mortar institution, several states offer options for online degree bar admission. If your goal is to become a lawyer through an online law school, be sure to completely understand the options provided. Yeah, well, why don't they go ahead and tell you what the states are? Because I don't know what they are. Maybe California, because I feel like California is a lot more lenient. Yeah, it says, sure, you apply to any online law program. Programs like Concord and Northwestern in California. Geez, I had never even heard of these quote law schools, even though I went to college in California. But Concord and Northwestern in California both have online-only programs, but no flexibility for time and degree completion, and at a much higher cost. Okay, interesting. Major schools like Thomas Jefferson School of Law, that's that law school in San Diego that got sued about 5 to 10 years ago by an angry law student or law graduate who had passed the bar and still couldn't even get a job. And unfortunately, she lost her lawsuit against Thomas Jefferson. So it's funny that they're saying major schools like Thomas Jefferson School of Law or Taft University, never even heard of that place, may offer you a certain amount of name value. But attending a well-known program won't necessarily provide the kind of education you're looking for. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so just say no to Novus, please. I mean, don't be persuaded. If you see their ads next to my YouTube videos, just ignore them. And let's look up Concord, because Concord Law School, I did find an article about them last week where a Filipino student, this young man from the Philippines, had actually sued, but I don't think he sued Concord Law School. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, now I can't find the article. So what happened was that there was this poor Filipino guy who got suckered into going to Concord Law School. And then I guess he transferred to Truro. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Truro was always kind of like a joke law school on JD Underground, which is a legal forum that used to exist until a couple of years ago. And so the guy sued Truro because Truro ended up not letting him have a degree or not letting him get his diploma because they found out that he had transferred from Concord Law School. So yeah, I feel really bad for the poor guy, because being from the Philippines, he probably had no idea about the ranking of different law schools or what it takes to really have a shot in the legal job market, that how competitive it is, and the prestige or the ranking of your law school really does matter a lot. So the poor guy from the Philippines got bilked by Concord Law School, and then further bilked by Truro Law School, which is a very low-ranked law school in New York State. It's a private school. So yeah, so let's check out Concord Law School too, because I sure never heard about this either. Affordable, high quality, right, affordable, high quality law school. Okay, hi Twins Try, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for showing up today. It was sort of last minute today. Yeah, totally insane. So just it's just horrible. It's like consumer beware. People think that, oh, it's a law school, and look at the beautiful pictures on their website, and look how important this woman looks, this either law student or lawyerly looking person on the website picture. Apply now. They even have a toll-free number. Yeah, that's really classy. Okay, so it says, today we're part of the respected Purdue University system and accredited by the Committee of Bar Examiners of the State Bar of California. Yeah, interesting. So like I said before, California seems to have lower standards. Like they just are very friendly towards unaccredited, law schools galore. I think there are at least 17 law schools in California. Probably 2/3 of them should really be shut down because the job market is so tough. Even people who go to Hastings or Davis, or UCLA, not everybody is finding great, wonderful jobs when they graduate. And I do have a video on my channel. It was a reaction to another video called Shit Unemployed Attorneys Say. And so that woman had gone to UC Berkeley undergrad like I did, and then she went to University of San Francisco Law School, then got out, passed a bar exam, and couldn't find a job. So she made her video called Shit Unemployed Attorneys Say. And I don't think she's actually practicing law anymore. She tried to start her own practice, but that seemed to have folded after a couple of years. So it says, they just really try to sucker you in, especially non-traditional law school applicants, like older people who have kids, work and family obligations that, they can't afford to quit their real day jobs to take 3 years to go to a real law school. So this is how these like online law schools try to sucker you in, plus they either have no standards or very low admission standards. So, I'm sure they would take someone that scored like a 140 on the LSAT, or maybe they don't even require the LSAT, I'm not sure. But this says, we offer 2 innovative law degree programs as well as online flexible learning options that fit your schedule. It's affordable. You could qualify for a scholarship that may cover up to 20% of your tuition. Plus, the full tuition for Concord's Juris Doctor degree is less than the average cost of a 3-year full-time program at ABA accredited schools nationwide. Well, I wonder why. Probably because once you get this useless degree, nobody will hire you anyway, or many of their students probably don't even pass the bar exam. With a law degree from Concord, you can be poised for the next level of career success, right? Okay, so yeah, I was just surprised to hear about these crazy types of law schools. Oh, your friend went to Santa Clara University. Was it for law school? Yeah, because I do know a couple of people. There was an attorney I met. He was a federal government attorney in DC who had gone to Santa Clara for law school. And then one of my UC Berkeley classmates also went there for law school. But I think she might have maybe became an immigration attorney, like working for herself. Yeah. So, there's always going to be like some people at the very top of the class at these lower ranked law schools who do, thankfully succeed, and they manage to get decent jobs or move their way up and lateral into better jobs or government jobs, which are pretty sweet. But then for the vast majority of people, it turns out to be like one of the worst decisions they ever made, because they're saddled with so much debt, more than $150,000 or even more than $250,000 of debt going to a private law school, and then having nothing to show for it. And most of those schools do have pretty abysmal bar passage rates too. So yeah, just getting accepted doesn't mean anything, and it's not like cause for celebration just to get accepted. Yeah, the executive JD degree seems like a total scam. It says, well, of course, it's geared towards people who don't intend to practice law, but your goal is to gain legal expertise to further your opportunities in your present field. Well, it's just another feather in your cap or something to throw on your resume line if you're desperately trying to seek some sort of non-legal job, I suppose. But I don't know who would want to do this unless they just have so much extra cash or money from their family to help them get this additional title and piece of paper to show and say, I have this executive JD or JD from Concord Law School. So yeah, pretty sad. Another ad that I've also seen on YouTube with my videos, it's really sad. It's like the Maryland School of Law, or I think it's University of Maryland Law School. And they have a master's degree in law. That these ads just keep showing up on my YouTube videos when people are watching them. And yeah, look at all this stuff, Regent School of Law, it's 100% online, 8-week courses, Master of Science of Law. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe it. It's such an industry. It's such a racket. Higher education is a racket. I mean, growing up, I always was told that, you need to get a degree. My grandfather would always tell me and tell my cousins and me, how important it is to get a job that requires a license, because then you'll be in demand. And then, of course, my parents greatly valued education. You had to go to college. It was expected that we all go to college plus go on to professional school. But now, after all these years and seeing how expensive it is, I can't believe how expensive it is to send a kid to college, much less law school or any sort of professional school. Even just going to a 4-year university is so expensive for in-staters. In North Carolina, it's at least $24,000 a year for in-state tuition at UNC or NC State, and then University of California is so expensive. Their law schools, even as an in-state resident, is well over $40,000 a year, or maybe $45,000 a year for law school tuition as an in-stater. So, I went to UC Berkeley as an in-stater just because I slid in right before they changed the residency rules. So I was able to pay in-state tuition at UC Berkeley for the last 3 years, but they've changed all the requirements. And now there's no way someone from out of state like I was, would be able to pay the very low in-state tuition. Yeah, so the LLM is $28,000 a year at University of Maryland. And I'm assuming they're like masters of legal studies or whatever type of degree probably cost similarly about $30,000 for a year. So definitely don't get bilked by these kind of things. Yeah, the brilliance. Okay. Yeah, hi, thanks for being here. Thank you guys for showing up to today's live stream. Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight these other things because it does trouble me that these kind of unscrupulous programs are being marketed towards people who watch my videos, and I certainly do not endorse any of them. Rather, I highly encourage people to just please avoid them at all costs. So at this point, it's been a little over half an hour. I'm trying to keep my live streams a little shorter so I don't have to edit them down later. But I do appreciate everybody who did tune in today. Let's just continue to, hope and pray for justice, regarding all the victims of police brutality. Hope you all stay safe, and I'll see you at the next live stream. Have a great weekend.